Before we begin, let's set the tone. What time is it where you are? Is your room quiet? Are you in bed, listening with your eyes closed? Let the day melt away. There's no need to follow every word. Just drift with the sound of the past. Tonight, you'll become someone else. A Viking Shieldmaiden. Not the mythical warrior queen carved into fantasy novels and Norse-inspired role plays, but the one history barely recorded. The one who trained in mud, who stood in the shadow of ships, who learned the brutal economy of a winter raid, and who in silence was both feared and forgotten. Now, let's begin. The wind doesn't scream yet. That comes later. Right now, it whispers. A dull wind, heavy with sea salt and peat smoke, crawls across the beach outside your longhouse. You hear it stirring the grass through the thatched walls. It smells of old wood and wet iron. And fish, always fish. You're 15, and your training begins today. You've been practicing, secretly. You've watched your brothers drill with round shields and blunted axes. You felt the splintered grip of driftwood weapons stolen from bonfire piles. You've studied the rhythm, left foot forward, pivot, sweep, deflect. It's not elegant. It's not heroic, it's exhausting. But you've learned your people, Danes perhaps, or Sver or Geats, depending on who's doing the carving, don't tell their daughters they must become warriors. But they don't always stop them either. Especially when the farm is poor. Especially when the coastline is rich. Especially when the gods are quiet and men are dying across the water. Your mother was a healer. Your aunt was a fisher. You are something else. Not because you're better, but because you're hungrier. This morning you washed your face in cold stream water, bound your hair with braided hemp and stood in front of the training stones. You held your breath when he approached. Your uncle. Tall. Thin. Missing 2 fingers. From his left hand. The man who taught your older cousin to row and hunt and shout before he could tie his boots. He didn't ask why you stood there. He just tossed you a worn leather strap. A belt, cracked and grey. Put it on, he said. We start with shields. Swords are lies. The Viking shield is not like the towering bulwarks of Roman soldiers or the intricate kite shields of later knights. It's round, almost childlike. 3 feet wide, iron boss at the center. Thin planks, often pine or linden. Painted if you're lucky. But you're not lucky. Yours is bare. Wood grain scratched raw from previous hands, and it smells. Like mold, he teaches you to grip the boss, not the rim. You learn how to let your shoulder take the blow, not your wrist. How to move with the impact. How to listen for the whistle of air before a strike. Your first bruise blooms just beneath your collarbone. It turns yellow by nightfall. That's how this life begins, not in glorious battle or on some wind-blown prow, but with an ache in your chest and dried fish between your teeth. But what does a Shieldmaiden do, really? The stories, the ones sung by scolds after too much mead, speak of women who lead charges, who cut kings down mid-boast. But the quiet truth is more practical. You learn to fight not to be a warrior, but to survive near one. When your clan raids, it isn't just warriors on board, it's everyone. You help row, you carry provisions, you patch sails and fetch water and haul loot back to shore. But you also stand in a line. And sometimes that line is made of wood and screams and weather you can't see through. Sometimes it is made of bones. At night, you sleep near your shield. It becomes your bowl, your seat, your drum, your funeral marker, if you're lucky enough to be remembered. The next lesson comes with rain, the kind that doesn't fall in drops but in sideways slashes. You are told to run the beach barefoot, shield on your back, until you no longer care about the cold. It takes 4 days. On the 5th, your feet bleed. Your uncle nods. He calls that progress. He doesn't praise, he corrects. Too slow on the pivot. Shield too low, feet too close. You'll trip on blood. That last one confuses you. Whose blood, you ask? He doesn't answer. One night, while the smoke from the hearth still hangs low, you watch him dig something from the coals. A bone. Long, smooth, yellowed like old ivory. He runs a knife along it and says, "This is a thigh bone from a Saxon, or maybe a Frank. The name doesn't matter. What matters is where it came from, and what it cost to bring home." He hands it to you. You sleep with this under your bedding now. Let the weight remind you what's out there. Let the ghosts teach you silence, you nod. You don't ask questions anymore. Not about the bone, not about the gods, not about your cousin's missing eye. Sometimes, at the edge of sleep, you wonder, if the other Shieldmaidens, the ones sung about, ever felt this alone. You've heard their names, Lagertha, Freydis, Alfhild, but they are distant fires. You don't know if they lived like this, mud-caked, starved, dismissed by older men and pitied by their own mothers. You only know your own hands, the calluses, the burns, the ache in your shoulder that never goes away. And you know that next. Moon, a boat leaves for the east coast of Britannia. You've been told you might be on it, not as a passenger, not as a legend, but as ballast, as someone who holds a shield long enough to make room for someone else. You fall asleep to the crackle of the fire, the drift of old songs from the long haul, and the faint creak of wood swelling in salt air. But what waits on the shore of another land? What happens when your foot touches soil you've never seen? When the shield becomes too heavy and the men around you stop looking back? The crossing is not heroic. It's wet. It's long. It stinks of fish guts and stale breath. And the boat leaks. You're lashed to the rowing bench by a strip of hide because the wind keeps trying to throw you into the sea. For 3 nights and 2 choking mornings, you sleep in damp furs, curled beneath the bench, listening to men spit, cough, and mutter omens into the salt. No one talks about glory. Not anymore. This isn't a raid for fame. It's for timber. Iron. Cattle maybe, if you can haul them back. And grain, though by the time the sacks make it across the sea, they'll be damp and crawling with weevils. You're told the landing will be easy. That's always the first lie. Your feet touch land before your eyes do. You're pushed from the boat while your legs still shake from rowing. You hit the sand. Cold. Gravel-studded. The wind smells of damp grass and charcoal. You pull your shield over your shoulder and move, not because you know where you're going, but because someone is shouting behind you. The coastline is empty, or so it seems. There are no horns, no armies, no flaming arrows or desperate defenders sprinting across. The hills just smoke. Thin pale rising from a distant tree line. You've been taught that smoke means something. It means presence. It means dwellings. It means people who don't want to see you here, and people, when surprised, often do one of 2 things: run or fight. And sometimes they do both at once. The first building you reach is not a hall or fortress. It's a barn, a sagging, soot-smudged structure half swallowed by mist and overgrowth. Its thatch roof is half collapsed. A stone circle nearby still holds the shape of last season's fire. You and 4 others are told to sweep it. Your uncle doesn't come. He's further up the hill with the older men, checking for movement, counting livestock maybe. The barn smells like rotting straw and wet hide. There's nothing here. Until there is. You spot the shape at the back, a blur of movement behind old hay bales. Someone's hiding. You freeze. Your fingers go to the edge of your shield. You've practiced this. Low stance, wide legs, center of balance shifted to the rear, but you've never done it for real, not like this. One of the men with you lunges too soon. He slips. His foot catches a stray beam and his shield clatters loud enough to wake the gods. The figure bolts. A boy. 13 maybe. His eyes wide and glassy with terror. He's not holding a weapon, just a rusted horseshoe and a half-rotted leather satchel. He runs. No one chases. Not because of mercy, because the wind changes and with it comes the sound. The Saxons don't scream when they charge. That's what surprises you. You expected some kind of noise, taunts, bellows, battle, cries like in the old songs, but they come like fog, like branches cracking in a storm. Suddenly there are figures in the trees, 6, then 10, then more, no armor. Just rough cloth, makeshift shields, farm tools, clubs, and one with a blade that still gleams under soot. They're desperate. That makes them dangerous. You hear the signal horn, but it's too late to retreat. So you drop to a crouch, shield up, you don't even think. Training takes over. The first blow hits your rim, not hard. A glancing strike from a rusted axe, you swing. Your own. Not a sword, just a short-handled hatchet used for splitting firewood. It finds meat. You feel it bite into someone's forearm. You feel the thud. You hear a sound, half moan, half snarl. But you don't stop. There's no room for stopping. Not in this moment. Not with sweat in your eyes and mud pulling at your feet. You survive the first fight, so do most of the others. One man doesn't. He was new. Quiet. You never learned his name. His leg was cut at the thigh. Artery split. He bled out on the rocks. No one wailed. No one paused to bury him. Not yet. The barn is burned, not because of strategy, but because someone needed warmth and didn't tend the fire right. You watch the flames lick at the frame while the sky turns yellow and bruised. There is no triumph, only soot, and the quiet sound of waves turning over broken shields on the shore. The next day, your group finds a small settlement 2 miles inland. Not a village, just a knot of huts, woven, together with brambles and mud. The people are gone, fled except for one. A woman, old, bent, wrapped in wool so grey it seems part of the smoke. She says nothing. She just watches you. And then she spits in the dirt. Not at you, just near you. You feel the others tense, but your uncle raises his hand. Leave her. Someone mutters. But no one disobeys. That night at the makeshift camp, your uncle finds you staring at your hatchet. He doesn't say much. He never does. But he sits beside you, drinking from a leather flask that smells like pine and mold. She'll remember, he says. You look up. The old woman? He nods. She'll tell them what happened here. Who came, who took, who burned. That's the way it's always been. Shieldmaidens don't leave carvings, they leave stories in the mouths of enemies. You ask him if they'll come back for revenge. He shrugs. They always do. Sometimes they win. Sometimes they don't. Then he stands, pats your shoulder once, awkwardly, and walks off. You're left with the weight of the hatchet in your hand, the stink of your own sweat, the memory of the boy's eyes, the old woman's silence. You're not sure what you are anymore. You don't feel like a warrior. You don't feel like a thief. You don't even feel like a girl. You feel like something in between, something temporary, something no one carves into stone. But what happens when the next raid fails, when the shield cracks, when winter comes, early and there's nothing to bring home? You return home with less than you left with. 1 sheep, 2 sacks of half-damp barley, a cracked axe head, and 5 fewer crew than when you set out. It's called a successful raid by those who stayed behind. The longhouse smells the same: peat smoke, wet wool, salt, and the same women sit in the same corners, weaving the same cords. But they look at you differently now, not with awe, not even with respect, just differently. You've changed shape, you've been somewhere they haven't, and you carry that silence like smoke on your skin. No one celebrates your return. That only happens. In stories, there's no feast. No horn blasting, no scold chanting your name beside the hearth. You sleep on the same old straw mat. Your calluses tear open again the first time you lift the grain sacks for drying. You're asked to patch nets, carry water, rub down wet furs, because life doesn't stop just because you saw blood. Your uncle says this is good. That boredom is the best outcome of any raid. He says, if you come home and life is still dull, you won. But it doesn't feel like winning. It feels like waiting. By autumn, your muscles are stronger. You can hold your shield without thinking. You've learned to eat without wincing when your shoulder clicks. But the bruise on your hip has turned hard, like stone under skin. The healer gives you a paste that smells like sour ash. It doesn't help, but it marks you. You're not a girl now, not entirely. You're something else, something unfinished. And that, your uncle says, is the real cost of surviving. You don't come back whole, you come back half, but sharpened. One evening, a boat arrives from the east, not a raid, a return. It's a crew from a nearby fjord, relatives of your cousin's wife. They bring stories of a settlement deeper inland across the narrow sea, where land is free and Saxons weak. They want people to go: farmers, smiths, shield bearers, healers, children. You're not sure where you fit in that list, but your name. Fair's whispered, not offered, just mentioned. Your uncle says nothing at first. Then, over dried fish and sour ale, he asks if your shield is still good. You say yes. He nods. That's the only question that matters. The night before the boat leaves, your mother takes you aside. She doesn't beg you to stay. She doesn't cry. But she ties a small knot of herbs and whalebone into a scrap of old linen and places it in your hand. This is for silence. She says, you ask what kind? The kind you carry after seeing too much. You don't answer. You just hold the cloth in your palm until your knuckles turn white. You leave before the sun rises. The sea is calmer this time, the wind less cruel. You know the crossing now. You know how to lash your feet, where to grip the oar, when to chew the dried root to keep from retching. And when land appears again, you feel nothing. Not dread, not excitement, just the familiar ache of something beginning. Again, the new settlement is no more than a ring of timber stakes and a pit for fire. But the trees nearby are thick. The soil is dark and wet. The rivers run heavy with trout, and the stones glisten with ore if you know where to look. There is no one to fight, not yet. But there will be. The Saxons have not forgotten, and winter has not even begun to whisper yet. Your job is simple. Hold the shield, stand at the line, train others, sleep light, eat little. Wait. That's what a Shieldmaiden becomes, not a blazing warrior queen, not a death wish on horseback, but a wall. A quiet, watchful wall, one that does not break. In your dreams, sometimes, you see the old woman again, the one you spared. This time she's not silent. She says something you don't understand, something in the old tongue. And behind her the smoke forms shapes. Children, farms, ships, faces you no longer remember. And the boy, the one with the horseshoe. He's standing in the mist holding a stone, not throwing it, just showing it to you. You wake before he speaks. Years will pass. You will go on more raids. Some will fail, some will feed the hall, some will end with names carved into boat ribs and hillstones, but not yours, because your name is not sung. Your victories are not painted. Your life is not made of legend. It is made of endurance, of bruises that never heal, of mud-caked boots and thin broth, of a shield that becomes lighter, not because it weighs less, but because your arm no longer remembers the weight. And one day when your hair is silver and your voice is no longer needed, someone younger will pick up your shield and ask what it meant, and you'll say nothing, because the real story was never in the shield. It was in what you carried behind it. But how many Shieldmaidens returned and said nothing? How much of history is buried in silence, because no one thought to ask the quiet ones what they saw? It starts with a mistake, not a bloody one, not at first, just a wrong color. You're 12, sitting near the shipyard's edge, grinding red, ochre into a powder with your thumbs. The dust gets under your nails and stings where your skin's cracked from cold. You were supposed to mix it with seal oil. Instead, you used goat fat. Now it smells like sour cheese and clumps on the wood. Your father sees the smear on the hull of his prized longship, just beneath the carved serpent prow. He doesn't shout. He doesn't curse. He just closes his eyes and turns away. You'll spend the rest of the day scrubbing it off with bundled reeds and snow melt. The color stays. It's the wrong shade of red. But no one forgets it. You're not meant to be in the shipyard. That's a place for builders, sailmakers, men with broad shoulders and calloused thumbs. You're a daughter. A third daughter, at that. No inheritance, no prospects. Just hands quick enough to tie a tight knot, and knees strong enough to carry buckets. Your mother wants you to marry a leather worker from the neighboring fjord. He has 4 goats and half a smile. That's apparently enough. You say no. She doesn't argue. She just stops speaking to you for 3 days. The shipyard becomes your hiding place. You sweep sawdust. You collect bark scrapings. You run errands. But mostly you watch. You watch the way old Joran traces dragon scales into the hull with the tip of a burnt stick. How he layers the tar, then the paint, then the wax. How the rain beads on the surface like glass once he's done. You ask questions. He ignores you, but he doesn't send you away. One day you're bold enough to bring your own brush. Not a real one. Just horsehair tied to a twig. You dip it into leftover pigment and draw spirals into the discarded planks no one will use. You copy the patterns from shields, tunics, and burial stones. Jorund watches, still says nothing. But the next morning, a real brush sits on top of your work pile. No one claims it. Your town is small, 2 longhouses, 6 huts, 1 blacksmith. A place people pass through, not toward. But the shipyard keeps it alive. Men come from farther up the coast to trade pitch and linen, to buy new vessels or repair cracked beams. And slowly, they begin to notice the red designs, swirls, spirals, runes, faces, not just protection symbols, but stories. A fish leaping into a net, a bird carrying a coin, a woman gripping a serpent by the neck. One trader laughs. Who's your painter? A mad child? Your father shrugs. Maybe. But when the painted boat sails straighter and faster than the others, when it doesn't split during the storm that ruins 3 others, they stop laughing. They ask for the red again. They want that red. And you take your brushes and pigments and move to the storage barn behind the tanning pit. You paint in secret, shields, scraps, whatever you can find. Not for trade, not for art, for tracking, because now you notice the symbols too, not just yours, new ones, on rocks, on trees, on the edges of boats drifting up the fjord. Someone is using paint to send messages, and you're the only one who seems to understand what they mean. You mark the designs in charcoal on your skin, studying the variations, how certain strokes mean a day's travel, how certain swirls suggest directions or raids, and slowly you begin to realize what no one else does. Your symbols are being used to map something, to send warnings or invitations. You take your sketches to your father. He squints, then frowns. "These were yours," he says. You nod, "But they're not," you say. And that's when he tells you. Years ago, before you were born, your mother had a sister. She was the original painter, quiet, strange, left-handed. She made designs that confused the elders and frightened the children. One day, she disappeared. Gone south, your father says. Married a trader or drowned or vanished into the woods. No one knows. But your spirals are her spirals. Your red is her red. You didn't invent it. You inherited it. And now someone else is using it too. But who? And why? What messages are they hiding in plain sight, right in front of a village too busy to notice? The symbols begin to appear more often, not just near the shipyard, but along the goat paths in the cliffs and carved into birch bark tucked under stones. You even find one burned into the underside of a water bucket, always the same style, spirals, rings, eye shapes, but distorted now, twisted, elongated. They're versions of your work, but changed. It's like someone is using your handwriting to write a different language. You stop sleeping much. You sit up with a taper candle and trace the marks onto scraps of sailcloth. You compare them, measure angles, draw connections, and slowly a pattern emerges. Each mark corresponds with a movement, a shoreline, a current, a hidden trail. They're not just symbols, they're a map. You bring your findings to the one person who won't tell you you're imagining things, your grandmother. She's blind, almost deaf, but sharp as a flint blade. She listens while you describe each symbol, and then she does something you don't expect. She laughs, then she tells you a story. Your aunt, she says, used to paint the fjords. Not boats, not shields, the land itself. She believed the world could be read like a page, that every ridge and tree stump carried meaning, that the gods left trails in bark and wind, and that people had simply forgotten how to see them. She thought you could draw a message in the earth, your grandmother says, and someone far away would read it. You ask what happened to her. Your grandmother doesn't answer right away. She left or was taken, but her mark stayed. Then she adds, almost as a whisper, and some said they made her mad. You begin to carry your paint pot with you again. Red ochre and ash mixed into a sticky paste, not to decorate, to respond. When you find a new symbol left by whoever's out there, whoever's tracing your aunt's ghost through the fjord, you mark beside it. A dot, a cross, something simple to show someone's watching. At first, nothing happens. Then one day you find a spiral with a mark already beside it. Your mark, copied but wrong, just slightly off. It's an answer. You're not alone in reading the code. You're not alone in writing it either. Your father catches you drawing near the goat trail one morning and scolds you. Not angrily, just with tired eyes. People are talking, he says. You shrug. Let them. He sighs and rubs his face. They say you're your aunt come back, that you see things that aren't there. Maybe they're not looking hard. Enough, you say? He smiles. Not kindly, not unkindly either. Then he walks away. That night the long ship burns, the red one, the one you painted years ago. Flames leap higher than the mast. The dragon head glows orange. The carved runes blacken. No one saw who did it. No one speaks the name. But you know. This wasn't about the ship. It was about the paint. About you. Someone is sending a warning. Not just through symbols now, but through fire. You go to Jorund. I need to speak to whoever knew my aunt, you say. He doesn't ask why. Just stares at the smoke still curling into the sky. There's one, he says. The ferryman. The ferryman is older than he looks. He doesn't live in a house, just a lean-to beside the cliff where the water's blackest and the boats scrape moss as they pass. You find him gutting fish with a bone knife. He doesn't look up. I knew. Her, he says before you speak. She was like you, only quieter. She had ideas about color, thought red meant something it didn't. Got her in trouble. You ask what kind of trouble. He cuts deeper into the fish. She painted a boat once. Not with stories, with names. Whose names, you ask? He wipes the blade. Men marked for death, traders, chiefs, a priest. You feel your throat go dry. She believed that if you painted someone's fate into their boat, they couldn't escape it, he says. Like a curse. You whisper, did it work? He finally looks up. His eyes are the color of old nails. Of them drowned. You walk home in the dark. Your brush feels heavier than your axe ever did. Your mother greets you at the threshold with a look that says she's heard. You need to stop, she says. This isn't for girls, but you're not a girl anymore. You're a painter whose work is being turned into prophecy, into punishment. And somewhere in the hills, someone is using your brush strokes to end lives. A week later, you receive a package wrapped in animal hide. No note, just a box. Inside, a rolled piece of sailcloth. You unroll it slowly, it's your own design, copied perfectly. Only this time, the red is fresh, wet, and in the center of the spiral is a name, your name. But who sent it? And what does it mean? To be the next name on your own painted curse. You don't scream, you don't cry, you don't run to your mother or your father or the healer with the cloudy eye who once said your drawings looked witch-born. You just sit there staring at the painted sailcloth where your name now coils, crimson and glossy, in the shape of your own spirals. You touch it. It smears slightly. Fresh. Someone painted this recently, someone close, and someone who wants you, to know they can reach you. You keep it hidden under your mat, not out of fear, but because you don't want it stolen, not yet, not until you know how to answer. You start watching people, not suspiciously, just closely. You study the hands of those in the shipyard. Who's good with a brush? Whose fingers are stained red without reason? Who walks into the woods for firewood and comes back too soon or not at all? But the trouble with answers is they lead to more questions, because the man you first suspect, an older apprentice with ink under his nails, dies before you can confront him. Found face down in the shallows, no wounds, no theft, just gone, and marked one spiral, small and crude, carved into his heel. The village council finally notices. They don't call them murders, not openly. They say unusual passings, one poor luck, a curse in the tide. But the silence has thinned. Even your mother, who once spat the word brush, now walks you to the edge of the longhouse each evening and waits until she sees the door. Shut, they're not protecting you, they're protecting what you know. You return to the ferryman, this time he doesn't look surprised. I told her to stop. Too, he mutters. You ask if your aunt ever painted herself. He doesn't answer. Instead, he reaches behind a barrel and brings out a board. Old. Dry. Wood grain like veins. He hands it to you. Painted on it. in a style older than yours, but unmistakably. The same are 4 spirals and a figure in the middle. Thin, long hair. No face, just a hollow where the mouth should be. She saw something, he says. What? The end of her own mark. You begin painting again, not for beauty, not for commission, for tracking. You leave red spirals on trees near the goat path, then hide in the brush to watch who touches them. You carve one into the underside of a cart and leave it outside the hall. Within 2 days, someone adds a matching swirl, opposite direction, like a mirror. You compare the symbols. You start recognizing differences. Your aunt had a left-handed curve. Yours leans right. The copyist, whoever they are, uses both. A mimic, not just a follower, a reflection. That night you sit by the fire with your grandmother. You ask her if your aunt ever had a twin. She laughs. No, but she had a shadow. What do you mean? She had someone who wanted to be her, someone who followed, listened, learned. You ask who. She only shrugs, but her eyes look toward the cliff. You walk the cliff path at dawn. It's cold. Mist rolls in from the sea. The ferryman's lean-to is empty. No fish, no boat. Just silence. And a canvas, nailed to the driftwood wall. It's a ship. Your ship. The first you painted. The wrong red. The sour goat fat mix that stayed in the wood, like a stain. But now it's shown from above like a map. Sails stretched. Shoreline marked. A dotted trail leading from the boat toward your home, and a final mark, a red X over the longhouse. You run, you don't think, you fly down the path, slip once, bark your shin on a root. The sun's barely up when you reach. Your house, nothing's burning, no screams, no blood. But your name is on the door, painted in red again. This time a long brush stroke with a line through it. Erased. You throw open the door. Your mother is there, pale, silent. On the table, a bundle. Inside, your brushes. The real ones. Not the ones you kept in your mat or strapped to your belt. The ones you lost last year during the You find him at the harbor, standing at the end of the pier. He doesn't look back, but he speaks. She gave them to me, you know. Your aunt. Why, you ask. She said they were dangerous. You step closer, and you used them anyway. I didn't. He turns. His face is older, not by years, by weight. But someone did. Who? He holds out his hand. In his palm, a small wooden disc. One of yours, but with his mark. His spiral, and in the center the same hollow mouth as the faceless figure on the old board. He says, I never painted. I only taught. You step back. The sea is calm now. The boats rock gently. No one else is near. I didn't kill them, he says. I gave them language, what they said with it, and that was theirs. But why use my name? He shrugs. Because you were the first to listen. You take the brushes back. You don't burn them. You don't throw them into the sea. You dry them. You clean them. And you paint again. Not ships. Not curses. You paint. A story. Your story. On a board nailed to the inside of your longhouse door, spirals, red, names, dates, trails. You teach others to read them. You make your work public, so no one can use it in secret again. And slowly, the marks become language. Not shadow, not fear, but memory. Years later, children will ask about the red patterns on old boats, on walls, on stones near the fjord. Some will say they're warnings. Some will say they're prayers, but a few will say no. That's the story of a girl who stopped her own curse and painted herself out of someone else's ending. But how many names were written in paint and never spoken aloud? How much history was painted over before we ever knew to look? You are 42 and a widow. That's the first thing people say about you now. Not your name, not your craft, just the widow who doesn't leave the boathouse. Your husband's been gone 2 winters, taken by a sudden frost and a lazy fire, 2 things that should never meet. He was a sailmaker, quiet, good with knots, loved salted herring too much. You didn't love him, not really, but you'd learn to be gentle with each other over time. And in the Northlands, that's more than most can say. When he died, no one thought you'd stay. They thought you'd move south, remarry, be done with the cold. Instead, you moved into his boathouse and stayed. You fixed nets in the morning, patched sails by afternoon. By dusk, you're boiling roots into glue and dragging broken oars into piles for firewood. No one asks you to, but the fishermen start leaving things near your door. A chipped anchor hook, a worn coil of rope, a broken tiller. Small requests without names attached. You mend them all, quietly. One morning you find something strange behind the boathouse. A boat, not one of yours. It's small, single mast, poorly carved, unbalanced. The paint is flaking, the wood swells with every frost. No one in the village claims it. You leave it alone, but every morning after it's closer to your door, until one day it's leaning right against your wall like it belongs there. There's no note, just a rope, a new rope, freshly woven, looped and coiled neatly on the deck. You test it with your fingers. Good knots, smooth finish, spun with care. But what's it tied to? That's the question. You ask the dockmaster. He shakes his head. Not mine, he says. You ask the priest. He doesn't answer. Just frowns and makes a sign in the air, the kind meant to ward off bad spirits. You ask the children. One of them, dirty-nosed, sharp-eyed, grins. She lives in the rope, he says. You laugh. But that night, when you unravel the coil, you find something strange inside the weave. A bone, tiny, bird-like, carved with a pattern, 4 dots in a square. A symbol. You've seen it before. Years ago, before the fjord was frozen half the year, there was an old woman who made rope. Not the coarse stuff for hauling nets, but fine threadwork, braided cords, cinctures for blessings. She was said to whisper into the fibers as she spun, telling the rope where it would go. Some said her cords found missing men. Others said her ropes refused to snap, no matter how heavy the haul. She disappeared one autumn. No funeral, no farewell, just gone. And this rope, it's hers. You uncoil the whole thing. At the very end, you find another carved bone, then another. 5 in total, each marked differently. You lay them out on your workbench, try to make sense of the patterns. They don't form a map or a word or any rune you recognize, but then you remember something your husband once said. Sometimes a boat isn't for travel, it's for keeping something. You take the strange little boat out into the shallows, lists to one side, the rudder sticks, but it floats. You row slowly, the rope coiled neatly in the center, like a sleeping animal. The wind doesn't fight you. The current somehow leans in your favor. It takes you past the fishing rocks, past the kelp beds, to the cliffs. There at the base of the rock wall you see a mark carved into the stone. 4 dots in a square, the same as the first bone. You anchor, carefully, knees aching. You tie the rope to the base of the mark. Nothing happens. Not right away, but when you climb back into the boat, you feel it shift. The boat turns on its own, not sharply, not violently, but gently, like it remembers something you forgot. It turns toward the east bank of the fjord, where no one goes, too shallow, too muddy, said to be cursed. But the boat moves anyway, not fast, not slow, just deep steady, like it knows. You drift for nearly an hour before you see it. A stake, barely taller than your knee, sticking out of the mud. You. Wade through the shallows, the cold biting at your shins. Tied to the stake, another rope and another bone. You add it to the others. 6. Still, you don't know what they mean, but now you understand what the boat is for. It's not just for water, it's for finding things. You spend the next week collecting stories, old ones about missing people, about disappearing boats, about things lost and never claimed. You chart the coast each time you set out with the strange boat and the rope. It leads you to something. A sunken net weighted down with bones, a carved seal stone wrapped in kelp, a jawbone with holes bored through the teeth. And every time another bone joins your collection, you build a map in your head of loss, of stories no one wanted to tell, of things hidden by tide and silence. People start noticing. The dockmaster watches you from behind barrels. The priest begins locking the church at odd hours. Even the children stop asking questions. One night, your door is marked with chalk. 3. Lines it means stop, you don't. The next bone you find is different, smaller, smooth, not carved. Just a single red line drawn across it, and it smells like oil, boat oil, fresh. Someone knew you'd come. But what's at the end of the rope? And what are you really pulling toward you? Memories or something still alive in the water? You don't take the strange little boat out for 3 days. Not because you're frightened. Not exactly. But because you've begun to feel like you're the one being rowed. Like each time you set foot on the rope-lined deck, something stirs in the current, as if your hands might not be the only ones on the oars. So instead you sit by your window. You stare at the water. You polish the bones. You try to recall every story your husband ever muttered between mouthfuls of salted fish. Especially the ones that began with, "You didn't hear this from me." It was said long ago, before the black pine trees grew so thick there was a way to bind memory into rope. You take something of the person, blood, hair, breath, and twist it into the first strand. Whisper over it, wrap it in silence, then spin and spin until it holds the shape of something stronger than thread. You're not sure you believe it, but the ropes in the strange boat are not ordinary. They're too light, too warm, too alive. That night something taps against your boathouse wall. Once, twice you open the door, nothing. But in the morning a new object sits in your net basket. A length of rope, no longer than your arm, tied into 3 distinct knots, not sailors' knots. Not fishers, you recognize one, a mourning loop, used in funerals, the others. Unfamiliar, but your fingers trace them instinctively. You pull at the first, tight. It resists. The second comes loose, and suddenly you smell pine and salt and ash. Your breath catches, you've smelled it before. The morning your husband died. You untie the 3rd knot with trembling hands, and inside, carefully folded, is a scrap of your husband's sailcloth, stained. With his mark, 2 slashes across a crescent. It's not possible. That boat burned with him, but this fabric hasn't been in fire. It's damp and new, and suddenly you're sure. Someone wants you to believe he's not gone, or worse. Someone wants you to keep rowing until you find out where he went. You take the boat out again. This time you speak. You don't know why. It just feels right. You say his name once, then again, then you say, "Show me." Nothing changes at first, but the wind shifts. The boat moves, not where you steer it. It takes you past the kelp beds, beyond the stake, toward a cove no one uses, too shallow, too full of rocks. Except the boat clears them, glides over them, like it's floating on a different layer of water. You reach a narrow inlet. There, half hidden beneath a collapsed overhang, is a bundle of netting. Inside, a sack. Inside that, a length of your husband's rope. You'd know it anywhere. He braided differently. A 3/4 twist, he learned. From a Saxon trader once. No one else in the village ever used it. It's intact, untouched by rot, and wrapped around the rope, more bones, 7 this time. But not carved. They rattle, like a message you can't yet read. You take them home. Clean. Them. Lay them in a line. You begin tying the knots from memory. One for the scent of ash. One for the chill that sat in your bones that morning. One for the coil of smoke that wouldn't leave the rafters. And the last, tight, angry. The knot of not. Saying goodbye, you leave that one tied and place it in the bottom of the boat. That night you dream of rope burning, not violently, just smoldering. Like wick, like memory. The air in your dream smells like resin and wet leather. And when you wake up, your hands ache as if you've been rowing all night. You check the boathouse. The boat is wet. The floor is damp. The ropes are curled differently than you left them. You were not the only one moving through the dream. 2 days later, the dockmaster comes. He doesn't meet your eye. "There's been a request," he says. "A trader from down the coast. Claims he saw a man matching your husband's description. North of Vollen, at a market, you stare at him. 2 winters gone, you say." He nods. "I told him he was wrong, but he left this. A bone. One of yours, carved this time, with the morning knot etched into the surface." You row north. Not because you believe your husband is alive, not really, but because the boat moves that way without you guiding it. And the bones rattle when you try to turn back. At one inlet you meet an old woman boiling seaweed. She doesn't flinch when she sees you. "You're the rope widow," she says. You don't correct her. She dips a shell into her pot, sips, then adds, "You're not rowing to find him. You're rowing to let him go." You nod, then ask, "What's at the end?" She doesn't answer with words. She ties a knot in the air. A complex one. Beautiful. Then walks away. That night, you tie it in the rope. One by one, you add the old bones. Knot. To the boat. To the fjord itself. You throw one bone into the inlet, one into the cove, one under the stake, and with each one, the water changes. Smaller waves, lighter fog, quieter wind, as if something is releasing. You don't find your husband's body, but you do find the last thing he made, a small wooden float, marked with your symbol. On the underside, 2 slashes and a crescent, and a third mark, scratched in after, a line between them, a separation. You burn the rope, not all of it, just the morning knot. You let the other knots remain, and you hang them in your boathouse, above the workbench, above your bed, above the door, each one a memory, a direction, a story you unraveled thread by thread. But how many others rode in silence, thinking they were the only one? How many messages waited, hidden in knots and bone, for someone patient enough to untie them? Autumn falls hard in the north, not slowly like a soft shift in color, but with weight. The skies darken, the water thickens, the wind turns to ice. Everything begins to sag. Nets, trees, shoulders. Even the light seems to break more easily. But You are still rowing. Not out of grief anymore, out of knowing, because now you see the fjord differently. You don't just drift across it. You read it. Each rock, each ripple, each twist of tide feels like a verse. And the boat, your strange, silent boat, keeps answering in ways you barely understand. You speak less now. Even your dreams are quieter, but the knots hang from your ceiling, like constellations, and the bones rattle less. The villagers start to come to you quietly, one at a time, not for rope, for closure. A young boy with a father lost at sea 10 winters ago, an old woman whose daughter married a merchant and was never seen again, a man whose brother disappeared upriver after a fight no one speaks about. They don't ask you to find them, they ask you to listen, and then they leave things behind. Bits of cloth, locks of hair, a carved comb, a cracked spoon. You knot each into rope. You speak their names softly. You float out to where the water feels hollow, and you let go. Not everything is returned, but some things shift. One morning, a basket appears outside your boathouse. Inside, 6 tiny bones, not animal, not bird. Human infant, swaddled in moss. No note, no explanation, but tied around the bundle, your rope, your knot. The complex one you burned after your final journey north, the one no one else knew, or so you thought. You carry it out to the deepest part of the fjord. There's no wind. Even the gulls are quiet. You hold the bundle to your chest. You don't cry. Instead, you speak. Not a prayer, just a question. Who else remembers? You let the water take the bones. The rope floats for a moment, just long enough to cast a reflection that looks nothing like you, and then it sinks. You wait. The boat doesn't move. It rocks, gently, back and forth, like a cradle. You begin carving. Not wood, not stone, the sky. You make symbols out of starlight, linking knots to constellations, one loop for each loss, one twist for each name unspoken. Soon, others join you. The children bring their own ropes, some wrong, some right, all eager. You teach them not to fear knots, to read them. You say every twist is a memory someone didn't want to lose. And they listen. A trader arrives from the south. He sees the bones strung over your door, the ropes that crisscross the harbor like spider silk, and the symbols scratched into the dock. He asks if it's witchcraft. You say, no, it's mourning. You just don't recognize it. The priest finally speaks to you, not to curse, not to confess, to ask. He brings you a strip of cloth once belonging to his brother, lost in a river crossing during his youth. He's never told anyone. You take it. Tie a single knot. Burn the edges, add no words. He says nothing. Just nods and walks away slower than he came. By the first snow, the fjord has changed. There are fewer shipwrecks, fewer cries in the night. The air doesn't howl anymore. It hums, low, deep, like rope pulled tight across the world, like the sound of something finally held together. You grow old, your hands stiffen, your eyes fade, but the rope continues. Other hands now, other knots. Your boat is taken apart and rebuilt 3 times. Each time, the new owner paints it red. Not bright, rust red, ochre and ash. They say it's lucky. They don't know it's a language. Your last day, the sky is grey, no storm, just silence. You sit beside the fire, the old sailcloth in your lap, the final bone in your palm. You don't tie it, you don't burn it, you just hold it, and you whisper, keep the knots loose. Let the wind speak. Then you sleep, and the boat outside rocks once, then stills. Later, the villagers say the fjord felt different that night. The water pulled backward for a moment, like it was holding its breath. Then it sighed, and the wind tied. itself into a knot around the mountains, a knot no one has yet undone. But how many widows left no names, no headstones, no screams, only ropes we never learned to read? How much history is still floating just beneath the surface, waiting for hands gentle enough to row toward it? You were born in winter, not the poetic kind with glittering snow and candlelight, the other kind, wind through cracked walls, soot in your throat, nails in the floor cold enough to sting. The kind of winter where the sun only rises for a few hours, and even then it barely lifts its head over the mountains. You don't remember your birth, of course, but they tell you that the first sound you made wasn't a cry. It was a laugh, a sharp little exhale, like you already knew how bad things could get and decided not to mind. No one knew what to do with that. So they gave you a name that meant light, hoping it might keep you warm. It didn't. Your mother died the next year. Fever. Quiet. She never coughed loud enough for the neighbors to worry. Your father was a stonemason. He stayed alive long, enough to build a wall around your village. Then he disappeared. Maybe the forest, maybe the sea, maybe somewhere in between. People don't ask much when a man vanishes after harvest. They just say, he must have had his reasons. And they leave food on your doorstep once a week. That's how you survive. You grow up counting. At first, it's just the stones. How many make up the wall? How many cracked over the winter? How many feel smooth under snow and how many stay rough? Counting gives you something solid to hold on to. By age 9, you can recite the number of beams in the hall, the number of sheep in the village, and how many boards creak between your bed and the hearth. But what you really count, what you never tell anyone, is the ghosts. The first one appears just after midwinter. You're outside, checking the stones as usual, when you see a figure crouched by the eastern gate. You call out, it doesn't answer. You approach, it fades, not like smoke, like forgetting. One moment it's there. The next you can't quite remember what shape it was, but it leaves behind a mark, a perfect circle drawn into the frost, not carved, just pressed. The next night, there are 2. Different spots, same circles. You count them. Then you start making a map. You don't tell the others. The village is small, suspicious, tired. They've survived winters by pretending not to see things. But you see a woman standing by the frozen well, a child pacing the edge of the barley field, a tall man with no hands staring through the butcher's window, always silent, always vanishing before dawn. You keep counting. By the 13th night, you have 17 ghosts. By the 21st, 23. Some come back, some don't. And each one leaves a new circle behind, until your map One night, an old shepherd finds you sketching circles in the frost with your sleeve. He watches for a while, then says, I used to see them too, before my hair turned white. You look up. You counted? He nods. Then he adds, but I never. Reached the last one, you ask, what happens if you do? He just says, don't, but you're a child. And curiosity is the only thing you've never run out of. So the next night you leave bread at the gate. You carve a little circle in the snow to mark your offering, and you wait. This time, the ghost doesn't vanish. It sits, just beyond the reach of firelight. A woman, maybe, draped in something too thin for the cold. Her hands are folded in her lap. You whisper, are you the 24th? She doesn't answer, but the frost around her begins to melt. A sign. You write it in your book. Ghost 24th answers heat with silence. You don't know what that means yet, but it matters. The next few nights are restless. Not because you're scared, because the ghosts don't come. No new circles, no shapes in the dark, nothing. It's worse than seeing them, because now it feels like they're watching you back. You try to stop, you burn your maps. Bury your notebook. You keep your head down when you pass the eastern gate. But one morning the butcher's son finds a stone on your doorstep. Flat, cold, carved with a circle. You take it to the woods, throw it into the ravine. It returns the next day on your pillow, this time with a second mark, a smaller circle inside the first. You stop sleeping, you go to the old shepherd. He won't open his door, but you hear him mutter through the wood. They want to be counted, but never all of them. You ask, why? He whispers, because the last ghost isn't a ghost. You ask what it is. He says, a memory that remembers you back. That night is the longest of the year, the solstice. The village lights candles in the hall. Someone sings. Someone else drinks too much. You slip away into the frost. You carry no torch, just a spindle of twine. You tie it to the gate. You walk. Each place a ghost once stood. You tie a loop of twine to a nail, a branch, a fence post, one by one, in silence. 23. Loops. When you reach the last place, the frost melt spot, you find her again, the silent one. You don't speak. You just sit and tie the final loop around your wrist. Then the frost rises, not from the ground, from her, and suddenly you see the truth. She was never the ghost. You were, or might have been if no one had counted. She reaches out, not to touch you, to hand you something. A stone, small, cold, empty at the center. You take it. The wind stills, your breath clouds, and then she's gone. You wake by the gate. The spindle of twine is wound tight again, now marked with 24 knots. You carry it home. You hang it above your bed, and from that day forward, you count differently. Not stones, not ghosts, but remembrances. The things that might have been lost if no one was watching. But how many children whispered to the frost and were never heard? How many nights stretched too long for someone to remember where they started? After the solstice, the frost doesn't melt, even when the days stretch longer. Even when the sun returns, thin and half-hearted, the frost stays. It clings to stones that once warmed by noon. It lines the inside of your window like a whisper. It settles beneath your bed, even with the fire lit. You try to ignore it. You sweep it, stamp it, curse it. But every morning, it's there again, and always in the same shape. A spiral, made from loops, like the twine you tied that night, like the map you burned, like something circling back toward you. The village doesn't notice, or pretends not to. They smile at you as they pass, but less now. Fewer children call your name. The baker gives you bread with a tighter grip. You are becoming something they don't want to talk about, something with a story too old for their tongues. You return to the places you marked. The tree stump behind, the mill, the nail at the east fence, the ruined chimney near the old barley field. Each spot is quiet, but not empty. When you close your eyes, you hear faint sounds. Nothing clear, just traces. A cough, a prayer, a footstep that doesn't crunch the snow. You call them echoes. You begin recording them, not in words, in threads. Every time you visit a site, you unwind a piece of twine from your spindle and leave it behind. You don't tie it. You let it dangle. 2. See if it comes back. The first one returns on the 7th night, wrapped around your door handle. But it's braided now. 3 strands. 1 from your spindle. 2 others, coarser, older. It smells like resin. You hang it on your wall. The next morning, another appears. Then another. Each one different. Each one altered. You begin to believe the echoes are responding, not with speech, With touch, the old shepherd dies in his sleep. They bury him under the east gate. You don't attend the funeral, but you go to the grave after, and on the headstone someone has etched the same spiral you saw in the frost. It wasn't you, but it was meant for you. A thank you or a warning. The following week you wake to find your floorboards damp, not water, frost again, but this time shaped, not a spiral. Not a circle, a line, straight, wide, splitting the house in two, one half warm, one half cold. You move your bed to the warm side. It shifts to the cold. You light the fire. It dies. You sit in the middle and whisper, "What do you want?" Nothing. Answers, but the cold fades. That night you dream of a hallway made of string, not thread, not rope, memory tied, stretched, braided. You walk it for what feels like hours. The walls whisper names, not loud, just there. Your mother, your father, the shepherd, the woman by the well, the child by the barley field, even your own name. Last, and beside it, a knot. You wake with your hand closed. Inside, a piece of twine, frayed, burned at one end. You spend days studying it. It's not from your spindle. It's too coarse, too old, but familiar. Then you remember your father used to use rope, like this when he built the wall, a rough flax, blackened with pitch. You find one of his old tools buried in the corner, and there, scratched into the handle, 4 dots, a symbol from your first ghost map. You dig at the foundation. You find stones that weren't supposed to be there. You pull one loose behind it, a hollow. Inside that, bones and thread and your father's ring. He wasn't taken by the forest or the sea. He was buried in the wall, not by accident. The stones were placed too neatly, too carefully, and you suddenly know he was counted by someone else, for something else, and now something is asking you to finish counting, to untie the memory. You rebuild your map, not in frost, in twine. You stretch threads from the old wall to the hearth, from the grave to the barley field, from the gate to the stones behind your house. It takes weeks, but each thread hums when you walk near it. You listen, and slowly the stories return. Your mother's final breath, the shepherd's prayer, the vanished girl who lived where the smokehouse stands, the child who drowned before you were born, the man with the scar behind the temple who left without a word. Each one a knot, each one untied, until there's only one left, a thread you didn't tie. It stretches from the far tree line to the edge of your doorstep. It wasn't there yesterday. You follow it, through snow, through brush, through wind, until you reach the ruins of the old chapel. You didn't know it was there, but the ghost did. Inside, the thread coils upward into the rafters, and there you find it, a spindle just like yours, but not yours, wrapped in frost, braided with bones, tied at the end with a single knot, and written beside it, carved into the wood, "Count yourself last." You pick it up, it crumbles, the frost rises, and for the first time you don't shiver, you just nod. That night your house is quiet. No frost, no thread, no echoes, just warmth, because you were never supposed to stop the ghosts. You were supposed to witness them so they wouldn't forget themselves. But how many memories still wander the frost, waiting for someone patient enough to see them, someone who never needed them to speak, only to arrive? Winter ends without permission. The frost pulls back in thin streaks, like the tide remembering something it left behind. The villagers say it's the start of a gentle year. They say the ghosts are gone now. You don't correct them, but you know better. They are not gone. They're settled, The difference is everything. You still count. Not ghosts, not echoes, but moments. A crow that lands at the same spot each morning. The exact second the wind slips through the thatch before sunset. The way a candle flickers, twice then holds. You don't record these in a book, you don't need to. The thread remembers now. You keep the knots above your door, you re-braid them after every storm. Some get tighter, some unravel on their own. You learn not to fight that. Let the loose ones fall. Tie new ones only when the story is ready. One day, a young girl from the next village brings you a bundle of feathers and asks you to help her find her grandfather's whistle. You don't ask what she means. You just place a thread in her palm and say, "Breathe into it first." She does. The next week, she finds the whistle, tucked in the corner of an old sled, beneath a pile of straw no one had touched in years. She returns with a smile, but more importantly, with a knot. You hang it next to the rest. You don't ask what it means, you wait. Each knot holds something you'll never fully understand. That's the point. You're not a seer. You're a weaver of weight, of what's left behind. That spring, the wall your father built begins to sink. Stones tilt. Gaps widen. The village decides it's time to rebuild. You offer to help. They're unsure at first. You were once the ghost boy. Now they call you the thread keeper. It's better, but still cautious, until you pull one of your father's old diagrams from behind. Everyone leans in, and there at the very edge of the page, 4 dots in a square, you recognize the mark. You say nothing. But when the new wall is finished, you tie a thread into the final stone, a small one, barely visible. But when the wind comes, that night it doesn't howl, it hums. Some years later, the woman by the well returns, not her body, her shape. You're sitting near the eastern gate, threading a new spindle when you feel it. A pressure in the air, not heavy, just waiting. You look up. She's standing where she always did, not staring, just present, like she never left. You don't speak. You just hold out the spindle. She places her hand over it. No sound, no movement. But the next morning the thread is braided. By the time you're 30, the house is full of thread, not cluttered, arranged. Lines stretch between rafters, curling like vines. Each one tagged with a knot, a feather, a bead, a tooth, a shell. Children come to see it. The braver ones ask what each knot means. You never answer directly. You just say, "This one holds a secret that forgot itself. This one belonged to a man who smiled with his mouth but never his eyes. This one used to be a lie, but it changed, and always. Don't pull, just listen. You're not old when it comes, but you've stopped rushing. You wake one morning and know the frost has returned, just in the corners, but it's welcoming. You walk the edge of the village, trace the old paths, count the old stones. You visit your father's grave, the shepherd's, the girl who found her whistle. You place a thread on each one, not tied, just set. Then you return home. You untie the first knot you ever made. It falls apart easily, as if it was waiting. That night you sit in silence, the spindle in your lap, the thread gently looping on its own. Outside, the frost begins to sketch something, a spiral, but not like before, not threatening, not watching, just closing, like a story drawing in its edges. You sleep and dream of thread without ends, of stories that tie themselves, of ghosts that count you, of children who will find the map you left behind, not in paper, not in stone, but in the air. Soft, patient, still humming with all the knots you never taught them, because they won't need you to. They'll know, because someone long ago once remembered them. But how many stories forget themselves simply because no one was there to count the endings? How many threads hang in the corners of old houses, waiting for a hand kind enough to tie them back into time? You are 11 years old. Your hands are ink-stained. Your sleeves smell like vinegar and beeswax. And your world is numbers. You live in the back room of a stone building that isn't quite a home and isn't quite an office. It's where your uncle writes for the king. Not important letters, not war scrolls or secret orders, just taxes, measurements, declarations, inventories of hay and fish and candles and debt. You copy them, line by line, from the morning bell until the shadows stretch long across the ledger table. You aren't fast, but you're careful. And in the kingdom of barley and ink, care is rare. Your uncle doesn't speak much. He has a cough that never healed. He keeps one hand wrapped in cloth. You don't ask why. He's not unkind. He gives you extra quill tips. Lets you sit near the fire when the wind finds the gaps in the wall. But he doesn't smile. He once said, "Smiles are taxless. That makes them dangerous." You wrote that in the corner of a blank page, just to keep it. Every 7 days the collectors come. They carry leather satchels and soft voices. They never yell. They never run. But they see everything. They ask questions about chicken feathers, about broken fence posts, about how much ash a family used last month compared to the one before. They write it all down. Then they nod and leave. You notice something they don't. When they stand in the doorway, they cast no shadow, not none, just the same shadow. Every time. Same length, same angle, even when the sun moves, even when they don't. You test it. You draw lines on the floor, mark them, watch them, and still, unchanging. You ask your uncle. He sighs, says nothing, just writes 2 words on a scrap of parchment. Don't. Measure. Then he burns it. You start measuring, not out of defiance, out of need, because the more you look, the more you see. The butcher's shadow is twice his height by dusk. The cooper's flickers. The midwife has 2. But the collector's, still the same. You begin drawing them, in the margins, in the wax build-up on your candle holder, in flour dust across the table. They always match perfectly. One morning a collector leaves behind a coin, not dropped, placed, right on your inkwell. It's wrong. No king's head, no date, just a square hole in the center and 4 notches around. The edge. You bring it to your uncle. He stares at it for a long time, then says, "Keep it, but only in the dark." That night you hold the coin beneath your blanket. It hums. Just softly, like a kettle just before the boil. You place it on your ledger and trace the edges. The shadow it casts bends toward you instead of away. You stop drawing. The next time the collectors come, you watch from under the stairs. They speak to your uncle in numbers, not amounts, lengths. 3 hands of firewood short. Half measure of barley echo. Candlelight past the mark. None of it makes sense, but your uncle nods. He writes it all down in red ink. You never see him use red. Later, when he's asleep, you sneak into the ledger. The red entries don't list taxes. They list names with dates. And beside them, shapes, lines, curves, angles, shadows, and next to each one a small circle, empty, except the last entry. It reads, "She sees them." Your name is beside it. The circle next to it is full. You touch the ink, it's still wet. You don't sleep. You pack your notes. You take the coin. You wrap your uncle's spare cloak around your shoulders and leave just before dawn. Not running, not sneaking, just leaving. The village watches, but no one stops you. Some even nod, like they knew. You walk until the sun is high. You rest near a stone marker by the old trader's path. The coin hums louder now. You place it in the grass and mark the shadow. It points north. You follow. You find others, not many, but a few children. Mostly quiet, ink-stained, careful. Each carries something strange, a broken scale, a cracked abacus, a feather dipped in rust. Each one sees the same thing. The collectors measure differently, and they are measuring us. You ask an older boy how long he's known. He shrugs. Since my father vanished during tax week, left behind his boots, not his shadow. You don't ask more, you just sit with him by the fire. Later you compare coins, they all hum. But only yours sings when the moon rises, a high, soft note, like a warning or a countdown. One girl, no older, then 8, tells you she saw a collector cast no shadow at all during the eclipse. Not even on water, she whispers. You ask what that means. She just shrugs. Maybe they don't leave shadows. Maybe they take them. You don't sleep that night. You keep your coin in your palm. It's warm now. You return once more. Back to the village. Back to the ledger. Your uncle is gone. The house is clean, empty, except for the table. And on it, one last entry, in red. Just 3 words. She knows now, and beneath it your shadow. Drawn, measured, perfect. But who has been measuring the measurers? How many shadows stretch unnoticed beneath the doors of those who pay without asking what they owe? The red ink doesn't dry, even after you touch it, even after the fire dies down and the wind scrapes the corners of the old tax house. The line of red that traces your shadow still glistens. It looks alive. It looks like it's waiting. You don't wipe it off. You close the ledger carefully, and you carry it with you because now you understand it's not a book. It's a mirror, one page at a time, showing you who saw, who didn't, and who pretended. The other children find you again. In the ruins behind the grain store, they don't ask what you saw. They know. Each one has found their own entry, their own name, their own unfinished shadow, drawn by a hand they never saw move. Some refuse to look at their page, some draw over it, some burn it. But you start adding to yours, not in red, in black, in blue, in charcoal. You sketch your shadow again, only this time bent, twisted slightly to one side. Not broken, just moved, and when you do, the coin hums, then clicks, just once. A mechanical sound, like a latch. And when you hold it up to the window, something new appears. Inside the hole in the center, a shape. At first you think it's a speck, dust, but it moves. It's a figure, a man, standing, very still. You tilt the coin. He tilts with it, always facing you. You show the others. Some cry. One girl laughs. The sound is not kind. Another boy throws his coin into the ravine. But you keep yours. You study it, and you begin to realize this isn't about taxes. Not truly. This is about presence. What it means to leave something behind. A weight, a mark, a cost. Even a shadow has debt. The next time the collectors come, you don't hide. You sit in the center of the square, coin on your lap, ledger open beside. You they pass without looking, but when they reach the well, they pause, they whisper, not to you, to the ground, to the space between their feet, and you see it, a flicker, for just a breath. The wrong shadow, not theirs, yours, cast behind them, stretching, curving, looping back toward you. You don't run. You do what you've always done. You measure. 3 steps from the well to the shadow's heel. 7 paces from its edge to the broken chimney, 12 finger lengths from the curl in its curve to the center of your own foot. You take the children north, to the edge of the woods where the trees lean toward each other like conspirators. There's an old shrine there, burnt, empty. Inside it, a stone tablet with no markings, until you hold the coin to the moonlight. Then it glows, 4 dots, like a ledger's corner, the same shape as the coin. You press it in. The tablet sinks. A drawer opens. Inside, parchment, a list of names. None you recognize, but each has a date and a shadow pattern, crossed out in red. All except one yours next to it, a box empty waiting. You trace the shape of your own shadow beside it with ink. With intent, you mark the curve, the lean, the way it never quite falls straight, and you close the box. The tablet glows, the drawer seals, the air changes, lighter, like a debt paid. When you return, the collectors are gone, not dead, not vanished, just replaced. Different men. No matching shadows. They carry coins too, but dull, inert. You ask the baker if she notices anything strange. She says, "The sun feels warmer." You nod. You don't explain. You and the others build your own ledgers now. Not for taxes, for truths. Each page holds a different kind of weight, the weight of a lie that lived too long, the shape of a silence that cost more than gold, the measure of a promise no one made but everyone carried, and one day, long after the frost returns, you find another girl sitting where you once sat. Ledger open. Ink fresh. She doesn't speak. Just points to the shadow of a tree that doesn't quite fall the right way. You sit beside her. You don't say, "Don't measure." You say, "Measure everything." But know which debts are yours to pay, because not all shadows fall from people. Some fall from history, some fall from forgetting. From record keeping, no one dared check. And now, you check, you write, you measure, you remember. But how many ledgers were closed before the final page was written? How many shadows stretch through time not because they must, but because no one ever asked who they belonged to? You were born into breath, not the kind that fills the lungs with joy. The other kind, breath that carries rot, the sour exhale of fear, the shallow wheeze of someone too important to die and too proud to admit they're rotting from the mouth out. You are a cleaner, not a healer, not a barber, not a doctor, just the man who scrapes the tartar from royal gums, oils the teeth of dukes, and wipes the blood from the golden bowls beneath queens' lips. You do not wear robes, you do not wear shoes, but your hands are steady, and your ears are trained to not hear. Your first job is with a bishop. He has 12 teeth, all black. You are told to make them shine. You ask, "Should I pull?" The steward says, "No, the bishop is proud and old, make the black glow." So you boil vinegar, salt, mint and ash. You mix it with burnt sage and badger fat. You tie bristles to bone and you scrape until the bishop screams. When you leave that night, your hands are blistered, and your bag is full of teeth he swore he hadn't lost. The steward pays you in buttons. Word spreads. Not that you're good, but that you're discreet. No letters, no prayer, no oath. You clean the mouths of men who speak for kingdoms, and you say nothing. That's how the palace finds you. You are summoned one morning without warning. The man who fetches you says only, "His breath has begun to win." You don't know what that means. You pack your bag, and you walk. The king does not speak. When you arrive, he cannot. His mouth is packed with cloth soaked in rosewater and laudanum. His face is swollen. His eyes are wet. There is no crown, just a curtain, a stool, a bowl of snow. You are told to kneel, you do. You are told to work, And so you do. The rot is thick, behind the gums, between the molars, up into the roof of his mouth. You see things that are not teeth, strings of meat, old wax, something green. The steward says, "The queen will not kiss him, make him worthy." You do not nod. You do not smile. You begin with the tongue. It takes 3 days. You do not leave the chamber. You sleep on the floor. You eat bread soaked in the same vinegar you scrub with. You pull 7 teeth, you keep 5. 2 are too soft to lift. 1 cracks in your hand like wet wood. When you finish, he speaks. Not thanks, not questions. Just this. Is it done? And you say, for now. You are not sent away. You are kept. They move you to a room with no window. It smells of wax and blood. Every morning, a new noble comes, each one more frightened than the last, each one with a mouth that tells the truth before they do. A chancellor, with silver tongue and bleeding gums, a princess who giggles until her molars fall out mid-joke, a prince with perfect teeth who swears he's never lied. You find ink beneath his tongue. You do not ask. You rinse. You scrape. You record nothing. One day you are given a new tool, not from the surgeon, from the queen. A stick of ivory carved into the shape of a lion's paw, a bristle brush at one end, a needle at the other. No note, just a cloth that smells like lilies and copper, you understand. This is for someone who cannot scream. That night the king calls for you alone. You bring the lion's paw. He does not look at you. He opens his mouth. You see something you shouldn't. Not a tooth, a ring, wedged behind his molar. Gold. Small. Etched with a sigil you don't recognize. You reach for it. He stops you. Says, "Not yet." You understand this is not a cleaning, this is a confession. One he cannot say aloud, one he needs you to hold. So you take the lion's paw. You do not remove the ring, you polish it until it shines behind his teeth like a secret no one can swallow. After that, no one speaks your name. You become the man beneath the curtain. You do not dine, you do not bow. You do not age. Only your tools change. Your fingers grow calloused, not from labor, from silence. Then one morning, a maid leaves a note under your basin. 3 words. He swallowed it. You know what it means. You pack your tools and you go. The Tuam king is dying. Not from war, not from poison, from what he tried to keep. You are told to remove it, you are told to retrieve. Not a tooth, not a tumor, the ring from inside him before he is buried. You enter the room. He is quiet, still, no cloth, no crown, just breath barely. You kneel, you take your hook, you open his mouth and you begin. What you pull is not the ring, not at first. It's something soft, wrapped in silk. You unwrap it. It's a letter, unopened, ink blurred, sealed with wax. The seal bears your family's crest. You never knew your mother worked in the palace. You never knew she wrote anything. You never knew what she gave up. Until now. You place the letter back inside him. You find the ring. You do not. Polish it, you do not speak, you leave the chamber, and you hang up your apron. They say the king died clean, mouth like marble, smile like stone. You say nothing, but in your bag, beneath the brushes and bristles and hooks, you carry something else now. A letter copied in your hand. Read only once and remembered forever. But how many secrets were held between the teeth of men who ruled? How many stories were scraped away before anyone ever heard them? They let you leave. Not many do. You walk out with your bag of tools, your apron rolled and stained, and a letter that no longer belongs to anyone. No one stops you. The guards look down. The stewards look away. The scribes write nothing. It is as if you were never there. And maybe but you weren't. You settle near a salt field, a village that doesn't ask names, only trades. You set up a small table in a lean-to beside the marshes. You hang no sign, but the sick come, not with war wounds, with mouths full of ache, rot, silence. And you do what you've always done. You listen and you clean. You keep the tools. Sharp, not for pride, for respect. Every bristle is oiled in mint and ash, every hook cleaned in salt and lemon. You no longer carry the lion's paw. You buried it. At the base of the first tree you passed on your way out of the palace. You whispered, "Nothing," and you walked on. One evening a girl appears. 9, maybe 10. She has no shoes, but holds a folded cloth tight in both hands. Inside, 4 baby teeth. 1 adult incisor, black. And a scrap of parchment. She doesn't speak, but the parchment does. A crest. Your crest. A letter from your mother's line. Sealed with oil, not wax. The message is gone. Bled through. Unreadable. But the seal. The seal is familiar. It matches the one on the letter in the king's throat. You stare at the girl. She just opens her mouth. 5 gaps, 3 wounds. You clean her teeth, you bind her jaw, you give her water and soup and a place to sit. She never says your name, but when she leaves, she takes the hook with her. Not stolen, returned. Like something she was meant to bring back to the earth. You go looking not for her, for the seal, for the sigil your family abandoned. You return to the city, quietly, under different sky, different shoes, different posture, and you find the royal library burned, records gone, ledgers sealed, the entire department of royal hygiene erased. It's as if no one ever had a tooth in their head, except one book, a thin leather-bound manual, the tongue as herald, a treatise on truth through decay. You recognize the author, your mentor. He once told you, the mouth is where kings hide their lies. You thought he meant gossip. Now you know better. You take the book. Inside, diagrams, tools you've used, tools you haven't. One looks like a miniature balance scale, meant to weigh the pain of extraction. Another is shaped like a question mark, designed to hook not teeth, but things behind them. And then at the very back, a drawing of your lion's paw, labeled Instrument for Accessing Non-Oral Memories. You stare at the ink. It doesn't move, but it feels like it should. You return to the tree, the one where you buried it. You dig. It's gone. Only bristles remain, wrapped in moss, curled like a sleeping animal. You take them home. You melt wax. You press the bristles into a new handle. Ashwood, not ivory, lighter, earthier. You do not carve a lion, you carve a mouth. Open, empty, waiting. The next morning, someone knocks, not a villager, a courier, young. In his mouth a note, not paper, bark. Rolled and pressed between molars. You extract it, you unroll it, a map, not of roads, of mouths. 22 names, each with a date, each with a tooth highlighted. Your name is at the bottom, no tooth marked, just 2 words, you begin. You understand now. The tools weren't for healing, they were keys, to open things others buried deep. Not just rot, but memories. Secrets wedged beneath crowns and behind wisdom teeth. You begin the journey to visit each name, not as a healer, as a rememberer. You carry your tools, your new bristle brush, your ledger, and the note from the king's throat. Each visit is quiet, each mouth opens slowly, and each tooth has a story, a betrayal, a vow, a scream that never made it to air. You don't extract, you witness, you hold the mirror, you let them see what they swallowed. 1. Woman gives you her molar wrapped in silk. This held my father's final words, she says. I bit them off. A man hands you a bicuspid in amber. I've dreamed in this language, I think it's older than blood. A child points to her gum line. There's a song in there, but only on cold nights. You write it all down, not as a doctor, as a scribe of the oral. You learn that teeth are truth traps, and breath is a kind of confession. Years pass, your hands stiffen, you work slower. But one day, the girl returns now grown. She brings your lion's paw polished and a box. Inside, a final note from your mother, not written, bitten. She bit it into wax. The grooves of her jaw left a pattern. When you press ink into it, it reads, he never meant to forget, only to hold. You understand, the king didn't steal the letter. He kept it safe, where no one would look. You clean your tools one last time, you wrap them in cloth. You bury them beneath the salt field, and you leave only a sign carved in stone. Memory lives, where silence aches. But how many truths were swallowed to keep peace, and how many kings died choking on the things they meant to protect? You work in a room no one visits. A high chamber, stone-walled and windowless, buried deep beneath the royal archives. There's a long table, a locked cabinet, a cracked hourglass that leaks sand onto the floor so slowly you've stopped cleaning it, and shelves, endless shelves. Maps rolled and tied in faded ribbon, some sealed in bone tubes, some stitched into cloth so fragile it sighs when you lift it. You are not a scholar, not a historian, not even a librarian. You are a duster. That's what the slip of paper said when they hired you. Duster. Cartography room 3. Preservation stipend included. You signed your name without asking what you'd be preserving. You were young, hungry, and you liked the smell of old paper. That was enough. Your tools are simple. A brush made from goat hair, a square of linen, a pair of gloves that tear every 3rd day, and a ledger with no writing. Each morning you choose a map. You lay it flat, and you brush, not to clean, to listen, because these maps, they remember, not in words, not in dates, but in settling, the way dust gathers only on one kingdom's borders, the way the ink fades faster where cities burned, the way, if you hold your breath just right, you can see a smudge that was never drawn, just carried. One day you find a map you've never seen, not in the cabinets, not on the shelves. It's on your table. No ribbon, no seal. Just there, waiting. You touch it. It's warm. The paper smells like cloves and vinegar. You unroll it, and your breath stops because this map doesn't show countries. It shows names, no cities. No rivers, just names, each one written in the shape of a place. You recognize one, yours. It's not in the center. It's near the edge, close to the fold. But when you brush the dust away, it moves, just slightly, a hair's width. But it shifts you. Try again. Brush, shift. Brush, shift. It's as if your name is traveling or being followed. You take the map to the archivist, an old woman with silver eyes who hasn't spoken in years. She takes one look, then closes the door. Says, "Where did you find this?" You say, "It found me." She stares at you a long time, then whispers, "There were once dozens like this, maps that remembered names instead of places. They tracked not where you are, but where you are becoming." You ask, "Is that dangerous?" She doesn't answer. Just pulls a small jar from beneath her desk. Inside, ash. She says, "That's what happens when a name outgrows its map. You leave quietly, you take the map, you roll it carefully, and from that day on, you never dust with the lights on. You begin to study the names, not just yours, the others. Some are long, coiled like rivers. Some are short, sharp, tense. Some are fading. One disappears entirely as you watch. You press your ear to the parchment. You hear it vanish, like a breath cut off mid-sentence. You keep notes, still in the blank ledger, not with ink. With dust, each page a pattern, swirls where memories settle, lines where borders used to be. One day, you find a circle, perfect, centered, empty. You try to dust it away. Nothing moves. You try to draw your name into it. The brush snaps. You understand. This is not a place. It's a hole, and something is watching from inside it. You return the map, too. The drawer, it returns to your table. You burn the map, its ashes form a new name, yours. You try to leave the room. The door doesn't open. 3 days pass. No food. No water. But you're not hungry. The maps begin to hum, low, steady, like a breath, like the room itself is inhaling. You take another map. You brush. It shows the empire that built the bridge over the sea of stars. It doesn't exist anymore, except on this page, and in the dust at the edge you find a footprint, small, bare, facing away from the capital. You mark it. The map folds itself. You start to learn the patterns. Every vanished kingdom leaves behind 3 things: a stain, a curl in the parchment, and a whisper in the spine of the binding. You learn to tell the difference between a fall by war and a fall by forgetting. The latter is quieter, but slower. It leaves more dust and fewer names. You write your name on the wall, not with chalk, with ash. It does not fade, it spreads, and you understand you were never a duster. You were a line, drawn too close to the edge of someone else's map. Now, you begin making your own, not of land, not of cities, of people who stayed too long in rooms no one visited. You chart them with dust, with breath, with the brush that finally stopped breaking, and in the center of your map, a single word, written, not in ink, but in shadow, remembered. But how many names were buried beneath the folds of maps no one dares to unroll? How many empires fell not with swords, but with a soft sigh and a drifting speck of dust? The day the ink began to bleed was the day you stopped calling yourself a duster. It began with the map of the northern archipelago. You'd brushed it dozens of times, knew every coastline, every wrinkle, every place name etched in a curling, barbed script. But on this day, quiet, candlelit still, you watched as the border around the island of Keln dissolved, not flaked, not faded, bled like ink remembering water. The black lines stretched outward, growing thinner, paler, until they vanished into the parchment like old breath. And then, where Keln had been, only blankness, not empty, just waiting. You blinked. Brushed again, the ink did not return. You checked your gloves, your bristles, the light. Nothing amiss, except the feeling in your ribs, like something was missing you very slowly from the inside out. You returned the map to its case. From that point forward, nothing moved quite the way it used to. The maps didn't lie flat anymore. They curled toward you, folded slightly as if whispering. Some bristled when touched, others sighed. One tore itself into strips as soon as your brush neared it, and your own notes, carefully drawn dust swirls and border curls, began disappearing overnight, not erased, absorbed. The maps were hungry, not for land, for attention, and you. You had given it to them too long, too carefully, too faithfully, and now they remembered. You began noticing changes in yourself. When you passed through the corridor leading to cartography room 3, the torches flickered in rhythm with your breath. When you touched iron, your fingers tingled. When you closed your eyes, you dreamed in elevation, not height memory. You dreamed of roads that never existed, of hills shaped like hands, of rivers that looped into circles, feeding nothing. And in each dream you saw your own name etched into the margins of places no one had ever spoken aloud. You'd wake with the smell of ink in your nose and a pattern of dust on your pillow. The archivist visited again. Unusual. She rarely left her floor. This time she brought a box. Inside, a quill, long white. Not feather, but something else, something harder. It hummed when you held it. It belonged to the last cartographer, she said. There were others, I didn't answer, just said, if you draw a line with it, the world follows. You didn't believe her, until you touched the quill to the floorboards, just a scratch. But the next morning, the stone beneath your table had shifted. A crack. Thin. Directional. As if the ground itself had obeyed. You asked her what happened to the cartographer. She shook her head. They drew one line too many, a border that couldn't be crossed. What happened to the land inside it? She looked away. It waited. It's still waiting. You began to map differently. Not dust, not ink, but pressure. The weight of memory left behind. Every map had its burden. The coastline of Blen, shaped like a wound no one cleaned. The city of Nar, its walls crumbled before its people ever lived there. The Tower Plateau, drawn without. Windows even in fiction. And always in the corners symbols, notations no historian could read. A knot, a ripple. A shadow drawn without source. You learned their language, slowly, through repetition. And when you could read them, really read them, you realized something terrifying. Each symbol was not just a record, it was a forecast, a signal that a place would vanish before it ever did. One morning, you opened a cloth map from the Western Reach. It was blank, but heavy. Heavier than any fabric that thin should be. You dusted. Nothing emerged. But when you breathed gently across it, your own outline appeared. Perfect. Still. Unmoving. And when you brushed your name into the corner, it vanished from your skin, from your memory. For 3 days you couldn't say who you were. You spoke. You moved. But your name floated like a broken line behind your thoughts. Only when you redrew it on the parchment did it return. The maps, it seemed, wanted you too. You told the archivist you wanted to stop. She nodded. You can, she said. But you'll need to choose. Between what? She held up 2 scrolls, one blank, one showing a place you had never seen but had dreamed of many times. Do you want to clean a world someone else forgot? Or draw a new one that will forget you? You didn't answer. Not then. You took both scrolls and went back to your table. That night, a map unrolled itself. The one with your name, faint, frayed, almost gone. It pulsed softly, like breath. You brushed once and it asked, "Are you ready to be the land, not the hand?" You didn't say yes, you didn't say no, you just opened the blank scroll and began to draw. But how many lives are mapped without borders, marked only in memory and dusted away before anyone knows they were real? You've stopped speaking, not out of choice, out of instinct. Words feel heavy now, like ink too thick for quill tips. When you try to speak aloud, when you try to describe what you see, the syllables crumple in your throat. The maps have trained you to communicate differently. You brush, you mark, you fold corners, you stack scrolls in patterns no one else understands, and in doing so, you speak more clearly than you ever did before. The language of dust is older than kings and quieter than truth. The blank map is no longer blank. You've drawn slowly. Not roads, not cities, events. Each one marked by pressure instead of ink. A faint curve where someone once betrayed a friend and never spoke of it. A thicker ridge where a child was born on the day a town sank into the riverbank. A single black dot, unmoving. That feels like grief. You run your brush over these places, not to erase them, but to let them breathe. And over time, something strange happens. They start moving. One day, you place your hand flat on the parchment, and you feel warmth. You lift. Your hand, your palm print glows, not gold, not light, memory. The paper has begun remembering you, your hours, your questions, your silences. It's learning you the way you once learned it. And the more it remembers, the more the other maps begin to change. Old scrolls that once curled at the edges now lie flat when you pass. Maps that refuse to show certain territories begin bleeding through their layers of ash and time. And then, one evening, a new shelf appears in the room. You didn't build it. You didn't order it. But it's there, wood pale as moonlight. No dust. Each slot holds a single sheet. Blank pad waiting. Not for maps, for people. The first name appears in the middle of the top shelf, not written, pressed, like something heavy sat on the paper until it knew who it belonged to. The archivist. You don't. Panic. You nod, you pick up the paper and you brush. Her story reveals itself not in writing, but in patterns. The rhythm of her steps across the floorboards, the way her breath always caught before she reached for a sealed drawer, the exact number of teeth she lost before she spoke her final word. None of this is useful history, and yet it feels like the most complete map you've ever read. That night she doesn't come to the archive. Her office is dark, her records gone. The chair sits empty, but still warm, and in her place, a single note. Thank you for charting me. The next day, another page marks itself. Another name, someone you never met, but once saw in a dream. You brush it. You watch their life take shape, not all at once, in layers. The smell of their father's coat, the shape of the spoon they always chose, the hill they never climbed but always meant to. These are not maps of geography. They are maps of residue, of lives that left shapes, and slowly you begin to fill the shelf. The room changes. The sand from the cracked hourglass no longer spills. The stones in the wall shift slightly, as if turning to face you. The light bends without flame. Time becomes soft. You no longer know if it's morning or night. You only know when it's time to dust, and when it's time to draw, and when it's time to listen. Your own map, the one with your name that once followed you, has stopped shifting. It lies still now, in the center of the table. You brush it gently every day, but it doesn't ask questions anymore. It doesn't move. It waits, and you think you understand why. One morning, the ledger on your desk closes itself. You open it. Inside is a single sentence. Borders. Our promises made in silence. You nod, you tear out the page, you burn it, and the smoke rises not up but inward, into the scroll rack, into the shelves, into the maps, like breath returning to lungs. You pick up your brush one final time. You draw. One last line, not around a kingdom, not between rivers, not through the sea around your name, a gentle border, a circle, no wall, just acknowledgement that you existed, that you touched the maps and they touched back, that someone someday might open a scroll and find you there. Not because they sought you, but because they brushed too carefully, waited too long, listened too closely, and in the dust that settled they saw the shape of your life. But how many people pass through the world like forgotten borders, shaped by breath, worn by memory, marked only by those patient enough to dust, their names into maps no one else would ever read. You are 12. You carry keys not for yourself, not for your family, not even for your home. You carry them for others, always others. Iron keys, bone keys, keys shaped like flowers or teeth or twisted rope. You don't own a single one, but your pouch is full of them, dozens, maybe more, clinking, tangling, breathing metal heat into your hip as you run from gate to gate, cellar to chamber, tower to threshold. No one gave them to you. No one trained you. You just stayed quiet long enough near the right doors, and when someone fumbled, sighed, or cursed, you stepped forward. Would you like a key? And you'd reach into the pouch, pull out just the right one, place it in their palm like it was always. Theirs it always fit, and they never asked how. You work in the side corridors of the old citadel. You don't sleep there. You don't eat there. You simply move through it. You learn it, smiles faintly and says, "Now I can forget the door entirely." He turns, walks into the wall and is gone. You sit there for a long time. Then you mark the stone, a circle with a notch, just in case. After that, more people come, not always real, not always living. One wears a mask made of wax. One carries a candle without a wick. One has no eyes, but sees every key before you pull it. Each takes only one. Each says the same thing. Now I can forget. You begin to wonder, are you unlocking rooms or closing them? Your pouch never empties, even when you give 5, 10, 20 in a day. By morning there are always more. Sometimes they hum, sometimes they burn. Once one wept. You wrapped it in cloth, left it by the old chapel's east pillar. It was gone by dawn. The head steward notices you. He doesn't smile, just says, "Keep inventory." You nod. You begin writing each key's shape, not in words, in drawings. Some are shaped like wings, others like teeth, one like a falling star. You number them, not by count, by weight. Some are heavy, even when held with 2 fingers. Some vanish before you reach the end of the page. The steward never checks your records, but he nods more now. One afternoon, a child comes running. Not a noble, not a servant, someone like you. Eyes too old, shoes too thin. They say, "The room is locked." You ask, "Which room?" They point behind them. There's nothing there. You hand them a key without looking, shaped like a bird's beak. They smile and step sideways into the stone. You mark the place. Later you find a feather on your bench. It doesn't match any bird you've seen. You begin dreaming of locks, not doors, people. A man who can't remember the face of his child. A woman who forgot why she laughs. A boy who used to speak but now only sings. You wake, reach for the pouch and pull a key. It glows. You don't give it away, you keep it for later. You meet a man who says he once had your job. He shows you his empty pouch. He says, "You'll stop when you find your own lock." You ask, "How do I know which door is mine?" He shrugs. "When it refuses to open, even to you." Then he vanishes. His footprints remain facing the wrong way. You try doors just to test. Most open. One doesn't. It's small, wooden, hidden beneath the stairs near the furnace. You try 30 keys. None work. You sit, you breathe, you wait, and the door unlocks itself. You leave it closed. That night you count your keys, 103. None the same. You stop sleeping. You start walking. At night, in daylight, in places even the guards forget. And you find doors not all wooden, not all stone. Some are voices, some are songs. One is a tear left on a banister. You unlock them all. You say nothing. But sometimes you hear the locks thank you. But how many people walk through life carrying keys they never chose, waiting for someone to remind them what they forgot to unlock? Your shoes are worn thin. The soles are patched with waxed cloth and bark. The laces broke months ago, replaced by strips of bandage given to you by the apothecary's mute apprentice. She tied them carefully, looped them thrice, and whispered something you didn't understand. But the shoes never fell apart again. You don't remember when you stopped asking why a door was locked. You simply listen now, to footsteps, to breath, to silence that leans in one direction. You can hear a locked door now before you see it. Not the handle, not the hinges, the absence of movement, of memory, of someone who used to open that door but no longer does. You come across a mirror one morning, not in a hall, not in a room, just leaning against a tree near the back of the grain house. No one claims it. It's tall, warped. The frame is cracked and missing its left corner, and when you look into it, you see a hallway, one you've never walked, one you've never unlocked, but somehow, one you left something in. You try not to blink. You reach into your pouch, and your hand pulls out a key you've never seen before. Glass handle, no teeth, just a stem that tapers to nothing. You raise it to the mirror. There's no lock, only your reflection, smiling, faintly, holding the same key. Only his has teeth. You lower your hand. So does he. You step back. The mirror leans forward, then it's still. You leave it. For now. That night, the locks whisper. Not loudly, just enough. You lie awake, listening. Click, thunk, slide, latch, but no doors open, none close. They're talking to each other. You pull out your record book and try to mark the sounds. You can't because these aren't door locks, they're people. Dreams that someone forgot to open, fears sealed too tightly. Hope locked in a cellar 3 centuries ago. You can't write that down. You just sit with it. You find a door in the floor of the scriptorium, no handle, no frame, just a slight swell beneath the tiles. You tap it with your toe. It hums. You press your pouch against it. One key rises on its own, wooden, knotted, heavy. You use it. The door opens downward. There's no ladder, just air. You drop a feather into it. It doesn't fall. You close the door. A week later, a priest comes to you, young, frail, hands ink-stained. He asks for the key to what I can't stop saying. You ask what he means. He opens his mouth. No words come, just music. Beautiful, endless, hurting. He closes his mouth, begins to cry. You give him a key shaped like a mouth, sealed shut. He takes it. He disappears before your eyes. The music stays. You hum it quietly for 3 days before it fades. Your pouch is heavier than ever, but you move faster. Each step finds a new door, a new lost look, a new person frozen mid-thought, waiting for something they forgot they needed. You unlock them gently, always gently, never in a rush. Because doors that wait too long creak in pain when they're opened too quickly. Then one night you hear your name, not shouted, not sung, spoken. From behind a locked door you don't remember closing. You turn. The door is in your own chest. You feel it. You knock. It knocks back. 3 times. You reach for a key. Nothing fits. You try the brass one, the leather one, the humming one. Nothing. You try the glass one from the mirror. Too soft. You try the first key you ever gave away, the one you carved from driftwood as a game. Still nothing. You sit. You wait. The knocking stops. You begin to fade, not your body, your outline. People stop seeing you unless you speak first. Doors stop swinging fully open. The pouch grows quieter, until one day a child brings you a key, carved with your name. You've never seen it before. It's warm. You take it. The child points to the mirror. It's still there, still leaning, still cracked, but now the reflection smiles and waits. You step closer. The key hums, not in your hand, in your chest. The lock turns, and for the first time, you feel something open in you. Something light like a story that forgot how it ended. You turn around, the pouch is gone, the mirror is still, and on the ground, a scroll, blank. You pick it up. Inside, a note. You unlocked what you never lost. Now others may remember, and now the keys come to you. Not as metal, as gestures. A glance that says, I forgot how to be here. A pause that means, please let me leave this safely. A breath drawn not in fear, but in hope. You carry them all, and you leave no locks behind. But how many doors wait? In people's hearts, quietly rattling through the years, waiting for a stranger with a key they forgot they gave away. Your office is below street level. Not a cellar, not quite a vault, just a room with no windows and too many shelves. People think you work in records. You do, but not of words. Your shelves hold glass vials, small, labeled, sealed with wax. Each one holds a scent. Yes, scent, not perfume. Not oil, just air, taken from moments people didn't want to forget. The vials are not magical. They're memories distilled, filtered through linen, trapped in wax, and corked for history. You are the one who gathers them, preserves them, shelves them in silence. Your title is Scent Clerk. No one speaks it aloud. Your tools are modest. A silver funnel, a wax sealing ladle, thread soaked in bee soil, and a needle-thin glass wand that you never lend to anyone. You carry a satchel lined with linen pouches. Inside are not vials, but requests. Tiny notes from people who've heard whispers about what you do. They arrive folded small, always unsigned. My mother's shawl at the end of summer. The smell of the sea the last day I saw my brother. The spice cellar after the fire. Some requests you fulfill, some you return, a few you keep, because they already match something on your shelf. The first vial you ever filled came from your grandfather's coat. He died before your 10th birthday. After the burial, you found his old traveling coat. You wrapped yourself in it. It smelled of waxed wool, tobacco, lemon balm, and dust. You knew it would fade, So you captured it, pressed the coat into an old honey jar, warmed it by the hearth. Let the steam rise, sealed the neck. You didn't call it anything, you just wrote, "He left while the smell was still warm." That vial still sits on your desk. It fogs when the wind changes. Your shelves are organized not by name, but by feeling. Top shelf, bitterness. Middle shelf, longing. Lower shelf, forgiveness. The back wall. Things no one admitted to missing. Every scent is tagged in shorthand. A vertical line for grief. A triangle for first love. A broken loop for secrets that were kept too long. You don't explain the system to anyone. They wouldn't believe you if you did.